So we're just 3 weeks into January, but if you've been around me this month, if you've been here, if you've been in the study group, you'll notice, and as I've been noticing, that I've been talking a lot about what I'm calling spiritual confidence. And I have a feeling I'm going to be saying a lot more about that uh, for a while. But today I wanted to speak to it on a really practical level. And the reason this comes up for me is that there's a phenomenon, and it's a little less now because we're in this space. But when we used to meet um, downtown and people would come in bigger numbers, I would bump into this. It felt like once a month, and it goes like this: someone who's been sitting with the community, who's been coming for a long time, one evening would bring their partner, or bring a friend, or bring their brother, someone that is coming for the first time. And so they'd show up a few minutes early and they'd introduce me, and I'd say, "Oh, great." And I say, "You can sit over there." And they'd say, "Okay, but I don't know what to do." And I would turn to the person, this member of the community who has been coming for 6 months or for a year or for 3 years. And I say, "You didn't explain what to do? You didn't explain how to sit?" And they would say, "No, because I didn't feel that I was qualified. And so I saved that for you." And I've spoken about this before, but it's the beginning of the year and I want to come back to it because it matters. And maybe it even matters more now that we are spread out, now that we have so many people in our community who aren't even in this town. You know, not everyone who sits with us, not everyone who is really core in this community can bring their friend or their sister or their partner to me and say, "Koun, please explain how to do this." But the point is, they shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to, because you do this. And the thing that we do is not so complicated. That doesn't mean it isn't hard. That doesn't mean it isn't frustrating. That doesn't mean that we don't sometimes wonder if we're really getting it or not. But the thing that we share with someone else about this practice, the way that we bring someone into this practice, it's not a big deal. And so I wanted to take the opportunity tonight, A, to just really drive that home, and B, to kind of go over some fundamental principles of what this practice is. Because even when we've been doing it for a long time, we can mystify it. We can give it an air of unknowability, right? Or we can imagine that there's some sort of initiation that happens. That moment when someone teaches you how to do the practice is somehow a more special moment than the moment just before that. That there's a before and there's an after. But it's really just so simple. I want to make sure that every person here understands, really understands, that you can leave this meeting tonight and you can go into the other room or you can go back to your home and you can explain to someone how to do this practice. You can initiate them into this. I think one of the reasons that this tradition, not just Zen, but Buddhism in general, struggles the way that it does is because we have this deep concern about who can say what and when. And there are nuances to that, and there are parts of that that are relevant to the priesthood and blah, blah, blah. But the most important parts, anyone can say to anyone, anytime. So what do we do when we sit? This is a 5-minute thing, right? Teaching someone to sit in Zazen is a 5-minute thing. Everyone gets their 5 minutes. And then they do the same practice that they learned in those 5 minutes for the rest of their life. Those 5 minutes have to be so simple that you then know what you're doing for the rest of your life. So if I tell you 20 things in those 5 minutes, I've set you up. So what do we do? Someone comes and says, I really want to know how to do Zazen. What do we do? There's no one way to do it. But I'll tell you what I do. And I've been doing it this way for a few years now. The first thing is I try to speak to the basic attitude of Zazen, the basic stance. And what I mean by that is that there's a kind of alertness that we try to bring. And the way that I've explained that to people, because someone explained this to me, I saw someone else do this a few years ago and I thought it was so skillful, was they first asked the people in the room, how do you sit when you don't care? And everyone kind of sat like this. And he said, okay, how do you sit when the thing in front of you is really, really important and you really want to know what that person is going to say next or what's going to happen next? And everyone in the room kind of sat like this. Something's happening. And he said, that's the basic stance of Zazen. Whether you do this in a chair, whether you do it on a cushion, whether you do it kneeling, regardless of whatever physical limitations you might have that dictate the rest of the posture, the basic posture is this. It's a posture of engagement. It's a posture of curiosity. However you convey that to the other person, it's important. And then we can drive home, right? That whatever you find in that, whatever that is, and we can, we know what it looks like in a traditional Zen context because we have all these photographs and we have these paintings, and people always sit in a particular way. Their legs are folded just like so. Their back looks just like so. All of that is supporting this engaged feeling. So maybe it will look like that after you show it to your friend, and maybe it won't. But it's this feeling that's kind of up. So we're here. And we're curious about this moment, or we care about this moment. We do a couple things. One, we arrange our hands. And you know what? For the practice of Zazen, for this practice of being alert and present, it really isn't so important that our hands are like this. But we also know how to do it, and it's nice. This is how we connect with the whole tradition. So we might as well explain this to someone. We put our right hand underneath, we put our left hand on top, we put our thumbs together, and we let this rest beneath our belly button, just like that. But if for any reason someone can't do that, or if you forget to say it in your 5 minutes, it's okay. It's not going to fall apart. So now we're sitting next to our friend or across from our friend, and we're sitting up and we're alert, and our hands are folded like this. We say, keep our eyes open. Just a little bit. Just so that we don't fall asleep, just so that we don't dream. Now we have three things: alert, hands, eyes. Breathe in and out through your nose. We could talk for hours about how to breathe. But at the end of the day, you just breathe the way that you're breathing that day. It doesn't have to be an act of control. It doesn't have to look a particular way or feel a particular way. It doesn't have to be timed a particular way. Trust the next breath. Now we have four things. And then we get to the big question. Right? I know that I'm holding myself in this engaged way. I know that I'm holding my hands in this weird way. I know that my eyes are open and I'm breathing through my nose. Now we get to the meditation part. Something's going to happen inside my mind. What's it going to be? What am I going to do? What is my task? I think I've heard this described 100 different ways. It all comes down to some variation of allow everything and don't choose anything. There's no thought that you're not supposed to think in Zazen. And there's no thought that you're supposed to chase after in Zazen. So if you're angry before you sit down, you'll have a little bit angry Zazen. If there's something you're worried about, that thing that you're worried about will be there with you. It won't pause. It won't magically disappear, and it won't disappear through force of will. But it'll be out there in a field of all the things that are on your mind, all the ways that your mind is saying, hey, 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 what about this? Think about this. Chew on this. And it'll try to get close. And you'll just keep your eyes really soft so that it never completely takes up your view. That puts us at five things. And then I'll add one more, which is that it's easy to say what I just said, but we're going to grab something anyway, right? We're going to grab onto that regret or that hope or that memory or that worry, that problem. And when we do, and we notice that we did it, we just move it back out here. We come back to this basic task of sitting still. That's it. That's the whole thing. You could get this instruction when you were 15 years old, and you could do this practice for the next 70 years without anyone ever saying another word about how to do this thing. And you would know what you always needed to know. The whole project is laid out. It's enough. Someone asked me the other day, I appreciated it because sometimes the question is, why do you do this? And I've talked about this a lot. People ask me why I do this, and I always get stuck. But instead, they phrase the question differently. They said, what is the benefit of this? And I thought, oh, that's an easier question. For me, anyway. Because what we practice when we practice in this way, sitting in this way, holding our hands in this way, breathing in this way, is we're practicing being still, truly still, physically still, but also creating a container of stillness for the mind. The mind is never totally still, but we're letting things kind of filter to the bottom. And in that stillness, we are being with ourselves as we are. And we're being with this moment as this moment is. And you can go your whole life without ever doing it at all. You can go your whole life without ever being asked to do it. And the cost of that is that we live a life of distraction. We live a life of believing that whatever is in front of us is the thing that we have to grab. Whether it's a thing or an idea. When there's this alternative to just be here, motionless and quiet. And I realize as I say that, and I realize as I was saying this the other day, someone might hear that and think, so what? But for me, when I think of what I would like to offer my kids, for example, it's this. It's the ability to be still. It's the ability to be with things as they are. And when I talk about spiritual confidence, there's this basic confidence that we're talking about of, am I allowed to even talk about this? Yes. But there's another confidence that is the confidence to be here, wherever here is, and to be now, whenever now is, without the need to push anything away, without the need to pull anything closer, without the need to control any of it. That's the thing that's on offer. That's the thing that's on offer in that simple 5-minute explanation about how to just hold your hands and breathe. You don't have to be good at it to share that with someone. I'm not even sure what it means to be good at it. You don't have to be particularly experienced. If you've used the toaster before, you're empowered to explain to someone else how to use the toaster. And so if you have sat still in this way, you are empowered to explain to someone else how to sit still in this way. Now, later, your friend or your partner or your brother might have questions. They might do it for a while and it might start to become a place where they feel a little bit lost or a little bit confused. And when that's the case, I think it's a good idea to send that person to someone who's done it a long time. That makes sense. That's reasonable. But that request may never come because that person may go home and sit down and hold their body like this and hold their hands like this and breathe. And start to develop that little bit of comfort with being here. And that may be enough. It is enough. That's where I'll stop.